All right, one of the things I want to talk about is, first of all, House Bill 607. So let's kind of set the groundwork for this. Nick, tell me about the life of this bill, where it is, and what it says.
Yeah, this bill has been going on for really the last 3 years since I've been chairman. I've been dealing with some sort of Parker's Law. Parker Rodenbaugh is who it's named after. Cordy Rodenbaugh and her husband live here around the Jackson metro area. I think they live up in Madison. Parker was a student at Mississippi State who was basically in a fraternity house and was sharing some what he thought were hydrocodones or some type of pill, and it was laced with fentanyl, and he died. And his mother has really been a champion for this cause, brought this to my attention 3 years ago. And since that time, that's kind of the genesis of it. Since that time, we've had hearings. We've talked to a number of groups, to Dr. Pannel and her group, to other healthcare groups, also to law enforcement. We've had hearings regarding this problem with fentanyl. Paul, you may not realize, and a lot of people don't, that fentanyl in 2021 was the largest killer between ages of 18 and 45.
Amazing.
More people died from it than from COVID in that age group. So the bill went through many different stages, and we finally settled on this one, which kind of produces and creates a drug-induced homicide statute, which a lot of people, rightfully so, had some heartburn about to begin with, because they didn't want addicts who were maybe out there just sharing a pill to be prosecuted for this, and I don't either, and the legislature doesn't either. We want to go after those that are exploiting the addicts, those that are making money off of these people.
So does it have safeguards in there?
Does.
In other words, it does for selling, not using?
Yes. The definition of it basically says if anything of value is given, that's the litmus test. If something was value, there is a specific provision that says if you're sharing it or sharing it between addicts, that does not count as giving something of value. Also, we have safeguards in there, what I call a safe harbor or good Samaritan provision, which allows for someone, if you and I are sharing a pill and I go into cardiac arrest or something, and you being the good Samaritan that you are, call the 911, they couldn't prosecute you for that.
So you think all the objections after this 3-year maturation period, all these objections have been met?
You know, I've told everybody we can't really. I think it's impossible to create a bill that in any situation, any bill that covers every single hypothetical that you can think of. But I do have this bill is modeled after one in Rhode Island. They've had prosecutions up there and had some success. It came to us from some groups that had some objections to it. So I think it's a good starting point. It does have a sunset provision for 3 years. So, and it has a requirement that peer and other people are supposed to report to me and other Jud B chairman on the prosecutions and how that's going. So I think it's about as protective of those interests that we can be.
One more question on this, though, as far as the bill is concerned. Aren't there some ancillary, or is this ancillary to don't we have some federal laws or existing laws that would have taken care of us for the most part?
There are some federal.
They just kicked up.
Yeah, there is a federal statute, and when the bill is authored by Chairman Trey Lamar, and when it first came out, it really modeled the first one in 3 years ago really modeled that federal statute, and that's where we had a lot of the dust up from different groups, because they felt that the statute, either the federal statute, the state statute, if it became one, was more of a sword than it was a shield. And I went to law school, and I was always taught that the law was supposed to be a shield. It's supposed to be there to protect people and not use to harm and to take somebody's freedom unnecessarily. Yeah. To answer your question, there is a federal statute. There's not in Mississippi. There's not really. Parker was a situation that kind of fell within a hole in a law. The person that gave this to him, there was I believe some malice in the facts of that case, but they couldn't prosecute him. So this is kind of an attempt to give prosecutors and law enforcement the ability to prosecute people.
Is this under a statute of manslaughter or what? I mean,
no,
what is it?
It creates a new crime, basically called drug-induced homicide.
Let me switch over to Dr. Pannel, and welcome back. And by the way, I forgot what it was. It was been several weeks ago. I watched your entire entire. You knocked it out in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think somewhere in there, in the top 5 guests in Congress, there's a plaque somewhere. But, I mean, it was very, very good, very interesting. And I think you left a very positive vibe for the state of Mississippi.
Well, thank you very much.
One of the things I did not know, how you got into this industry and in this career, and I didn't know that you had the family kind of some of this situation in your family, and it shows why you have such a commitment on this.
Right, yeah. I've been intimately affected by both mental illness and substance abuse. My father, he's a recovering addict, and not recently, but about 2.5 years ago, lost my father-in-law to alcohol dependence.
All right, now, why is this bill needed so much? And again, I want to get into we got plenty of time on the other side of this break, but I want to get into how bad this is in the state of Mississippi. But what would this bill do? Would it help out at all in your mind?
Oh, I mean, Chairman Bain and Representatives Creekmore have come up with some wonderful, innovative ideas to help with this in Mississippi. Everything thus far has been, federal, where they've been trying to strengthen our borders to reduce the supply of fentanyl. But that's really not something that we can control in Mississippi because most of it comes from Mexico, China, the dark web. So they have come up with great ideas that would actually reduce the demand for fentanyl and opioids in our state.
I got to ask this because it's a lot of people who have asked me to pass this on as far as the fentanyl strips, the overdose strips, or whatever it happens to be. Where is that now, Nick or Doc? Either one of you.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. That is going to be the way I understand it is people can use these strips to test for the presence of fentanyl. That right now they are prohibited under the paraphernalia statute, and it's a criminal. A violation of criminal law for someone to possess those. We are working on that. I am attempting to put one of those in a conference report. We have 3 bills that address fentanyl. One of them is a pill press bill, which has to do with the regulation of pill presses. I will anticipate that there will be some measure of putting in fentanyl strips into that bill.
Where do you get these fentanyl strips? At a pharmacy or someplace like that, or if they're against the law as far as possession?
Right now, because they are considered paraphernalia, it's hard to get them. But it's harm reduction. I mean, it's not necessarily going to reduce, the need or the craving for an opioid or fentanyl, but it does save lives because if you are going to use, at least you'll know what you're dealing with. It also helps law enforcement as well. So it's all about harm reduction with the fentanyl strips.
Is that in a federal statute or a state statute, Nick?
It's in a state statute. It's in our state paraphernalia.
And it's been in there for a while.
I can't tell you how long, but it's in there. It's just like, the old meth where you would have some paraphernalia for meth or something like that.
So, in other words, if you have a strip, they figure that you're a druggie one way or the other.
Like if you have a marijuana bong or something like that, yeah.
I got you. Would those test pill and liquid or just liquid? Those strips.
From what I understand, it will test anything that has fentanyl, but the potential of having fentanyl in it.
I got you. And that could be taken care of before the session ends?
I anticipate that it will be. I put an amendment in committee, but I anticipate that it could be.
I got you. Thank you, man. Appreciate it very much on that one. We got more coming up, and some of the behind fentanyl and how widespread it is and causing havoc maybe in your family across the state of Mississippi. We'll talk more coming up next. See. Back to our guest, Dr. Katherine Pannel, and also Nick Bain, Chairman Bain of House Jud B. Doc, some of the testimony that you gave when you start looking at this about fentanyl, and I do believe that sometimes kids, and I say kids, young adults who are experimenting with this, and they hear the word fentanyl and it's available at a pharmacy, sometimes that is taken the wrong way because we see that as far as morphine and other things. But there are 2 kinds of fentanyl, or there is fentanyl that is given because it's stronger than morphine as far as the doctors are concerned, is it not? It is.
It's 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine.
Wow. Give me a little bit of background on fentanyl itself and some of the testimony you shared with the congressional panel.
Sure. So fentanyl, I mean, there's two kinds. There's the legally manufactured pharmaceutical fentanyl that physicians use for severe pain as an advanced stage cancer or post-surgical pain. And then there's illicitly manufactured fentanyl, which is responsible for the current overdose crisis that we're seeing. The precursors are typically made in China. They're shipping it to Mexico where it's made, and then it's coming across our borders. But it's great for drug traffickers because it's easy because you can take such small quantities. It's easy to hide when you're transporting it, and they're cutting regular medicines with fentanyl to make it more powerful and therefore cheaper for them.
Just what is the composition always changing, kind of like methamphetamine? It's hard to track it.
Right. So that is the problem that we have. As soon as we find an analog of fentanyl that we see that's becoming prevalent with areas of our state where there are overdoses, we try to schedule it immediately, but then they just come up with another one.
I think you mentioned in here that it's actually about 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine.
Right. And what's scary about that, too, is when you overdose, Narcan, which we typically use in overdoses, if someone finds you in time, don't always reverse fentanyl because it's just that powerful.
You mentioned, and I see this all the time because we have stories on this, and I think Nick understands this, too, some of the arrests that have been made recently, and I say recently in the last 6 to 12 months, are just scary about the amount of that fentanyl. Yeah. There was one that you related to.
Oh, yeah. On Interstate 40, about an hour from Oxford, Mississippi, where I'm from, a woman was arrested transporting fentanyl. She had 20 pounds of fentanyl, which would essentially have killed over 4 million people had she not been arrested.
There's a lot of grains the size of a grain of salt. Kill you, so that's a lot in there.
Yep.
My question was, where do you think it was going? I mean, because it was not even processed, it was not incorporated in any other pills. Were they going to sell it straight like that, or were there some kind of processing lab that they were headed to? Nick?
I don't know. I can't answer for that specifically. I've talked to Sean Tyndall at DPS about fentanyl a lot, and they have many things that they can do. And now they're getting to the point to where they're dipping the liquid fentanyl, they're dipping the marijuana leaves in it. So to answer your question, there's no telling where it was going. We're just thankful that it got caught. As Doc said, it's all over the place. I could tell you in Corinth, Mississippi, where I live, you can buy enough fentanyl to kill all three of us, Paul, for $10. $10, and that would take care of 3 people. It's just
on the streets right now. You can get that,
and that's Corinth, Mississippi, my hometown. A small town. And I want people to understand, and I hope that they can become outraged about this, like I am, and like what Doc is, and all the people that I serve with are, because this is a becoming an epidemic.
And I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about this, but it just seems to me that those strips would be a very, very good thing to do because, I mean, I don't want to compare this to giving people needles, but at least this is a precursor to them stopping to use it if they find out it's tainted.
I think so. And we have in the House, we have a 3-part package. I know we talked about Parker's Law. We have another bill that's going to be regulating, creating a regulation for pill presses, the pill press that you would take to actually crush up a real Xanax, to crush it up and then to put it back together laced with fentanyl. We're going to be regulating those. I want to put the strip test. I want to put that in there and take it off of the paraphernalia list. And then we have another bill which Doc has helped us with quite a bit, which has to do with intervention courts, mental health courts, and making people aware. Because I think that's one of the biggest issues is just the education part of it. People aren't aware. Out of sight, out of mind. I wasn't aware until 3 years ago, and Cordy Rodenbaugh walked into my office. So we want to there's an education piece to this as well, not just looking at the criminality of it, but making our youth educated about it.
He is Nick Bain of the House of Representatives District 2, and he's chair of House Jud B. She is Dr. Katherine Pannel. And Dr. Pannel, we were talking about this earlier and talked about how prevalent this is as far as fentanyl, but I think you said in that testimony that the overdoses that we had between 2019 2020 in 1 year span, fentanyl comprised what percentage of that?
Close to 65%.
About 65% of all of that was fentanyl.
Yep.
I don't think it's going to get any better, number one, because of the porous border, right? Most of that is coming from that. And also, the most of it's produced in China. So we have two things working against us there, and the only thing that's going to stop that is more money on the border and more protection.
Well, and then state-wise, too, just more education, via media, just outreach. I know I talk to my patients, especially my college patients, every time they come in my clinic about this because they are literally clueless. They have no idea. And we've got to get this education in schools as well, make these kids aware.
What has COVID done to this as far as the pandemic?
COVID has been horrible for substance abuse and mental illness. We were actually making some progress with the whole overdose opioid epidemic prior to COVID, but since that time, it's kind of decompensated just because the amount of stress involved with COVID. More people have turned to unhealthy coping mechanisms like substances to cope with the stressors involved. So we're seeing relapses from those that have been addicted, and we are also seeing an increase in first-time users.
I know that we didn't come here to talk about that, but Nick, any other bills out there that you want to talk about real quick?
Yeah, as far as in Jud B, we have some other stuff going with that the prosecutors have asked for, and that some of our health law enforcement people have asked for. You know, the biggest one yesterday was, of course, the House passed a new version of the income tax elimination that came off the floor yesterday afternoon. It goes to concern some of the concerns that were out there. We're not raising anybody's sales tax. We're still cutting the grocery tax and still eliminating the income tax, hopefully within the next 15 years.
Have you read over that amended bill?
I was in Ways and Means yesterday when it came out, and then I was on the floor. So I'm familiar with it, not as familiar as I was with the other one.
What is the weak part? Is that amenable to the House? You think that may be something you guys can do?
The House passed it yesterday. The Senate is where it will be sent. We took a Senate bill, took a strike off, put the House language in there.
Wait a minute. So,
that's a lot easy for me to say, right?
Yeah. No. Back to square one then. In other words, everything the Senate suggested you struck off and sent it back to them.
We sent back a new version of the income tax elimination plan. Yes.
All right. What did you accept anything from the Senate?
Well, we didn't raise the sales tax. We took out, if you will remember from the income tax that we passed earlier in the session, it had a car tag provision, which allowing you to cut the car tag. The Senate didn't like that part, candidly, so we took that out. We took out the part about the
So in other words, the car tags thing. In other words, nobody would save any money on the car tag.
That's right. We had a 50% cut in there, and I think that was, from what I was told, was kind of a non-starter with the Senate. So we removed that in order to meet some of their objections.
Grocery tax cut about 2%?
It will be over time. It will be over time. The grocery tax be cut. No new sales tax, though.
You think this is going to avoid a special session?
I'm always hopeful to avoid a special session.
What's the deadline on this? Well, what does the Senate do now? They have to confer with
They have to concur, and I think that deadline's Friday.
On Friday. Final thoughts on this and the fentanyl from Dr. Pannel when we come to Dr. Pannel. I think they called you Pinnell up there. I wanted to call somebody and tell them.
They called me Dr. Pannel on the panel. So
yeah, they did on the panel. And I said, come on. Back with the final segment coming up in a moment. With Dr. Pannel, Pannel. Now he got me doing it again. Dr. Pannel and Nick Bain. Dr. Pannel, your final thoughts on this whole issue as far as fentanyl is concerned.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really hard to reduce the supply of fentanyl coming into Mississippi. That's why I think we really need to focus our efforts on the demand, which is in education in our schools, both mental health and substance abuse, strengthening our drug courts which would also include mental health treatment for those in drug courts as well, and just much more education.
It's one of the things we can do, and hopefully it will have some effects on that.
That's right.
And again, it is sad to know that we were gaining on this.
Yep.
The whole opioids thing back before COVID was concerned. Nick, I got a lot of people asking me about SB 2261, Buddy's Law. Mm-hmm. It was one of those things that died, and I think it died in your committee. and just a statement to the people on that.
Yeah, Buddy, what happened to Buddy was terrible, horrible, and we're all devastated about that. The bill itself did zilch. I want to be perfectly clear on that. Did zero to protect animals. What the bill did was it required a child who was adjudicated as hurting an animal to mandated a judge, no ifs, ands, buts about it, mandated a judge to send them to get some mental health. Now, I'm a lawyer by trade. I have a hard time taking away discretion from a judge. I believe in judges. I believe in social workers and those that are involved to look at things on a case-by-case basis and to determine what is in the best interest of that child. Also, there were a lot of unintended consequences. Number one being we have a strain on our mental health professionals, as Dr. Pannel can tell you now. There's a strain in getting people in there to see them. B, who's going to pay for it? Who's going to pay for that kid's mental help? Who's going to pay for that? The child? Possibly. The child's parent? Possibly. But, I've been doing this for 15 years or more, and I can tell you more often than not that child and their parents are not going to have the means to do that. Then it's going to fall back onto the counties and the courts and ultimately taxpayers to pay for that. It's a well-intended bill, but it's not ready yet.
How young could that happen as far as that bill?
As far as youth court, I've seen kids as young as 6 years old in there. And you tell me, does a 6-year-old need to have mental health? Maybe, maybe not. But we shouldn't be mandating that. That should be done on a case-by-case.
I agree. I think we learned a lesson during the 80% rule as far as overcrowding our prisons in one way or the other. Leave it to the judge's discretion. And
exactly right.
If you don't trust that, then get rid of the judge one way or the other. But
exactly right.
I tend to agree with you. HB 607, the one we were talking about, is that also, Nick, subject to the deadline on Friday?
It was an originally House bill. I invited conference on it yesterday, so it is headed to conference. There's not a lot that needs to be done with it. I think it has a reverse repealer in there for your listeners. That is just that means it would be repealed before it goes into effect. That's just a procedural tool that we use to try to keep things alive sometimes. So as far as I'm concerned, we will take the reverse repealer out of it and send the Senate a conference report, and hopefully they'll sign it, and we'll sign it, and it'll go to the governor.
This would become effective July 1st?
I think it's July 1st. I will have to check on that, but usually they are.
I got you. So the House has done everything as far as the personal income tax. The House has done everything they're going to do until they hear from the Senate, is what you're saying.
That's right. That we've done everything that we can do. We've sent it over there to the Senate. I think they did something. I'm not familiar. You may know more than I do on our version of the income tax bill. They had one yesterday. They did something to it, but I don't know what they did.
The Wildlife Fund, the Stewardship Fund, do you know anything about that one as far as yesterday's action?
I don't. I'm sorry.
Well, look, the sine die is around the corner, isn't it?
It's coming, about 3 weeks, and we'll be back home in God's country in Northeast Mississippi.
What have you guys done as far as redistricting in the maps? Is that taken care of, or where is it?
I can tell you that discussion is starting, and I think getting close to finality. I remember I was here in 2012 when we redistricted, and I believe that was the last vote. If I remember right, that was the last vote that I made that session. So I think that is a resolution. It's a House resolution, Senate resolution, so it's not subject to a deadline. So I think we can do.
I got you. Does the Senate have to concur with your map and vice versa?
Vice versa, yes. And typically, I think there's an unwritten rule, from what I'm told from the ancients, like Tommy Reynolds, that the House does theirs, the Senate just goes along with what the House wants, and the House goes along with what the Senate wants.
Well, you just had a pox put on you by Tallahatchie County. So.
Yeah.
The other part of that is this, and I think Chris McDaniel said something on Facebook that he is upset that he feels like leadership in the Senate is trying to district him out. Is anything like that going on as far as the House is concerned?
I can't speak to that. I worry about House District 2, and that's what I pay attention to.
So you like the tradition? It eases up on any additional headaches.
It does, yeah.
I got you.
That's right.
Guys, thank you so very much. I appreciate it. Nick Bain and also Dr. Katherine Pannel, thank you so very much. And we all commend you for your fight on this as far as fentanyl, because because of the border, it's not getting any better at all.
That's right. Thank you, Paul.
Hope the bill does pass.